In this video, I will show you 10 amazing traps in the Scotch game that you have never seen before, and these traps will give you advantage from the beginning. So let's move on to our first trap. After black takes, you go with bishop c4. This is the Scotch gambit. Black goes bishop c5, then you go knight to g5, targeting f7, and here black goes knight to h6, defending this pawn. But you shock him with knight takes f7, knight takes, and then you take with the bishop. King takes, and then you go queen to h5 check, and after black goes g6, then you can take the bishop. Even though material is equal, black have lost his right to castle, and you are having a huge advantage. Let's move on to our next trap. Here, after black takes, you go bishop c4, black goes bishop c5, and here you play c3, offering him another pawn. And black takes this pawn, then you play bishop takes f7 check, king takes, and then queen to d5 check, regains the bishop, and also exposes black's king. Black has lost his right to castle. You will also develop quickly, and you are completely winning. Let's move on to our next trap. After black takes, he goes bishop c4, and here black goes knight to f6, attacking your pawn. But you just castle here. Taking this pawn seems dangerous because of this rook. Therefore, black goes bishop to c5. But here, you go e5, attacking this knight. Moving back is just a waste of a move. Therefore, black goes knight to g4, attacking this pawn. But then you play bishop takes f7 check, king takes, and then you go knight to g5 check. And after king to e8, you regain the knight. Black have lost his right to castle, and you also have great attacking options, and you are just completely winning in just 8 moves. Let's move on to our next trap. Here, after black takes bishop c4, black goes knight f6, then you go knight takes d4, and here black takes this pawn, which is a big mistake. Because of the same idea, bishop takes f7 check. Now king have to take, and then you go queen to h5 check. He have to play g6. After that you go queen to d5 check. And after king moves, you can regain the knight. And here you should be careful about one thing. If you directly take this knight, then there is bishop b4 check, and then rook to e8 will pin your queen to the king. Therefore, first you have to take his knight, and after black recaptures, then you take this knight. And you are completely winning. Let's move on to our next trap. So after black takes bishop c4, black goes knight f6. You just castle here. And here, black takes this pawn. Then you go rook to e1, pinning this knight to the king. And here, black goes d5, defending his knight. But then you can just take this with your bishop. And after queen takes, you can develop your other knight. He cannot take because his queen will be hanging. Therefore, let's say black goes queen to a5. Then you can regain this knight. We are down a pawn, but we are ahead in development. Black's king is also not castled. And soon, you will be able to regain your pawn as well. Let's move on to our next trap. After e4, e5, you play d4. Black takes, and then you go knight f3, knight c6. Now this is again the Scotch opening, and here you go bishop c4. Black goes bishop to b4 check. But then you block with c3, enticing black to take with this pawn. And black takes. Then you just castle here. Black cannot develop his knight here because of this push. Therefore he goes knight e7. But then you go knight to g5, attacking this pawn. Black castle here, and then you go queen to h5, threatening checkmate. h6, trying to kick this knight. But then you play knight takes f7, and here black is completely lost. If you play something say a6, then you can just take this knight, king h8, and then knight to g4 is a checkmate. Here black have to give up his rook, and he will be up an exchange and completely winning. Let's move on to our next trap. After black takes, now you recapture this pawn with your knight. Black goes bishop c5. This is the classical variation. You play bishop e3, queen f6, is a standard response. You play c3, and here black takes this knight. Then you can recapture with the pawn. Black goes d6, opening up his bishop. And then you go knight to c3. Black goes knight g7, preparing to castle. You go queen to d2. And here castling seems like a natural move. But this is a big blunder because you can go d5, knight moves, and then you go bishop to g5. And now the queen is forced to move away from the knight, and then you can take his knight and you are just up a piece. Let's move on to our next trap. Here after black takes, you recapture bishop c5, bishop e3, queen f6 c3, black goes knight g7, preparing to castle, but then you go bishop c4. And after both sides castle, black goes knight to e5, attacking your bishop. But then you go queen to h5. If he takes your bishop, then you can take his bishop. He goes ahead and take his bishop, you recapture, and here the only move which saves his knight is d4. So that if you recapture with the pawn, black can go to the e5 square and its knight is safe. He also cannot go to d6 because of this fork. Therefore most of your opponents will go knight to b6. Then you can play e5, and here black have to defend his knight, therefore he goes queen to h4. But then you can further attack with knight to f3, forcing the black's queen to move away from this knight. Black can try d6, but then you can just take this pawn. Black recaptures, and then you can first take his bishop, sacrificing your queen. And after rook takes, then you can capture the queen and you are just up a bishop. Let's move on to our next trap. After black takes, you go bishop c4, and here black goes d6. Opening up this bishop, you play c3, offering him another pawn. Black takes, and then you recapture with the knight. Black goes bishop to g4, pinning this knight to the queen. You just castle here. And here black goes knight to e5, putting more pressure on this knight, so that you have to recapture with the pawn and your castle will be broken. But here you shock your opponent with knight takes e5. If he takes your knight, then you can take his bishop and you will be up a piece. Therefore he takes your queen. But then you can play bishop takes f7 check. King e7 is the only move, and then knight to d5 is a checkmate. Let's move on to our last trap. Well, if you are playing casually, then you can try this trap. But I highly recommend that you don't try this in your rating games. So here after black takes, you go knight g5. This is high inaccuracy because you are moving a piece twice in the opening and you are also not developing your pieces. And here the most common move by black is h6. You can just take this pawn with your knight, kind of a fried liver stuff. And after black takes, you can play bishop to c4 check, king e8, and then you go queen to h5 check. Black goes g6. You take this with your queen. King e7 is the only move, and then you go queen to f7 check. Black goes king d6. Then you go bishop to f4. Knight to e5 is the only move, and then you go queen to d5 check. King e7, and then queen takes e5 is a checkmate. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed these chess traps. And if you want to learn more amazing chess traps like these, you can check out this left playlist. And if you want to learn some chess openings, then you can check out this right playlist. And if you don't want to miss more of these videos, then don't forget to subscribe.